Hello, hello, all you lovely people. Professor Gray here with a new module on the law and ethics. But before we get to that, I would just like to do a little review and present one or two things new. First of all, I was on UB Reddit, and I saw someone there posting about not seeming to understand why we don't want students getting outright answers to assignments on things like Course Hero. By the way, I love UB Learns. It's a great way to kind of get insights into what's going on with you all. It's fantastic. But anyway, this guy was, maybe rightfully confused. And so I wanted to just clarify my expectations as an instructor with academic integrity that I don't want you to go to these sites like Course Hero to find answers to things. Now, really, I don't actually care if you go and find the questions of old exams and things, but it's what concerns me is you finding the answers. I hope you can see the difference, that the questions just gives you stuff to think about. That's fine. The answers, though, obviously, is not about you thinking anymore. That's about you just regurgitating someone else's work on these things. So please do not, in doing assignments, rely on things like Course Hero or whatever. Now, I will say, since I'm new at UB, I don't think anything I have is on Course Hero yet. Someone will change that, I'm sure, but not yet. So it's probably not going to be useful much for you all anyhow. But again, come on. I'm assessing your understanding of the material, not of another person's. So please, just avoid those sites. However, as always, if you really do find the answers somewhere, please cite the answers. Like I would have you cite any outside source. Cite, quote, acknowledge, the usual good practices. Because at the very least you do that. Again, I will not write a letter to the dean because that's not an academic integrity violation that requires, the school to do something about. However, you'll probably get a 0 depending on how much you're cutting and pasting, and we'll have a conversation about why that happened. Again, I'm interested in your understanding of the material, not someone else's. But that's, again, will be between us and will not involve department chairs and deans and others outside of this class. Of course, don't cite it, and I've discovered that you've been copying from someone else. Of course, that's a different story that let's hope we don't have to go into. Things are open book, open notes. That is fine. Closed to collaboration, not getting help from classmates or others, but also closed to solution sets and things like that. I doubt you'll find any, but hey, who knows? If you absolutely have to feel like you have to do that kind of stuff, well, please cite it so I don't have to write a letter to the dean. Okay, I've talked about this probably way too much, but it's important, and I really do want you not to be confused about any of this. All right. What else do I want to review? So I did mention last time the importance of taking notes, and so I highly encourage you, maybe right now, pull out the notebook that you have. Where's mine? Mine's right here. I took more notes. Actually, today was funny. I was at a meeting, and I completely forgot this notebook, so I used all these Post-it notes. So what's on here? Working teams for accreditation. That's pretty exciting stuff. I had to put sticky notes in there when I got back. But so pull yours out and you can follow along. I'm just going to mention a few things that I think are important to recall and remember. Maybe I'll say some new stuff too, but you can check along and make sure you're understanding stuff we've done before. This is also a good review for the exams. So in the last module, we talked a bit about this quote from Socrates about how ethics is about life, about ethics is about living a life, ethics is about us living together, and that ultimately, I don't know if I said this last time, but I'll say it now for sure. Ethics is inescapable. How ought I live? How ought we live? These aren't questions you can avoid because by your very action, you're embodying that. And it's, if anything, it's a privilege of not a good kind of privilege to be able to avoid those kinds of questions. Maybe, I don't know, the super powerful don't have to think about this, but that's a privilege, and I don't know if that's a good privilege that we would want someone to have. But realistically, ethics is inescapable. All right, and then another thing we talked about were these three different approaches to ethics. The first approach was meta-ethics, the examination of the meaning of ethical claims and how ethical claims are justified. The second area was normative ethics, the statement and defense of some set of basic moral principles. Again, stating and defending some set of basic moral principles. I don't know if you can hear that. There's people outside doing construction and there's bumps upstairs. Oh, it's a circus right now. Oh, well, we'll do what we can to survive. I think they're charging too much for this apartment and are having trouble renting it out. I'm whispering because they're outside my door. I can hear them talking. But I think they're charging too much rent for their place. And now they're having to fix it to justify it. I know they're taking me to the cleaners. Anyhow, where was I? Normative ethics, statement and defense of some set of basic moral principles. That's the second area. Third area, applied ethics, the analysis of and recommendation for how people should act in specific instances or on specific issues. This is where we get things like medical ethics, business ethics, leadership ethics, or runaway trolleys. I don't know. There's lots of specific areas of applied ethics that we can talk about. I also noted that the first two approaches, that is meta-ethics and normative ethics, can be combined together in what I'm calling ethical theory. Ethical theory is just this long debate going on for 2 millennia at least, which is, remember, this was the search for the one, the only, the architectonic. I pronounced it right this time. I know I reviewed the clips. I was saying architectonic, which I think sounds pretty cool too, but it's architectonic. Architectonic system for living and acting. And yeah, this is a debate that's been going on between philosophers for millennia, since the time of Socrates, in fact. So yeah, over 2,000 years. And whereas we contrast this ethical theory of philosophers with the applied ethics of normal people, again, just the everyday debates people have about moral issues, like it could be abortion, could be euthanasia, could be all sorts of different social concerns confronting society. Today, it's probably Black Lives Matter and the role of policing in the state and systemic issues with racism and structural bias and all sorts of stuff that are pretty hot, obviously applied ethics topics today. And why I think applied ethics is important for us to distinguish from that more abstract ethical theory is that, look, real people like us, well, you guys, I'm not real, I'm philosopher all the way. You guys, you don't have time to wait for the philosophers to settle the debates. They've been debating this for millennia. I'm pretty sure. I mean, this is one of the beauties of studying this, is that we're taking part of a conversation that we know will be happening 1,000 years from now still, if there's people around and we're not all underwater. We become fish people. I don't know. Anyway, sorry. And so that's one way I think it's important to distinguish applied ethics. That ethical theory is the debate of philosophers. Applied ethics are the debates we have in society or within our professions about specific issues and things we're confronted with. I hope that makes sense. And I might say another reason to care about applied ethics might be to like imagine you're on a hospital ethics committee, which they exist. And perhaps the committee is debating whether or not they should pull the plug on treatment on a patient who is demanding that all treatment be ceased. This sometimes happens. People who are terminally ill might just want to die. And this does lead often to debates by the committee about whether they should honor or how they should honor the patient's wishes. But now imagine there's a philosopher on that, and they're like, well, Nietzsche says, but what is ape to man but a laughingstock and a fool? So is man to overman, nothing but a laughingstock and embarrassment. Everyone else is looking at this guy like, who invited this guy to our committee? Nietzsche, what? Laughingstock, ape, Superman? What are we talking about here? So this is all why we have applied ethics. Everyday debates normal people or professionals or we as citizens of a democratic society have about the issues that we're confronted with. And bringing in highfalutin concepts is probably of limited use in those situations. You'll wear out the patience of people. But in this class, like I said, we're mastering all three because the idea is a really good thinker on these issues is able to understand the highfalutin stuff, but then express it in a way that a normal person can understand. Yeah, don't quote Nietzsche. Well, you guys can because you're still young. But when you get to my age, if you quote Nietzsche, they just look at you like, who let this guy in? That story is not autobiographical, by the way. I laugh at my jokes. That's no one else do. All right. Anyway. And I want to take this moment then just to mention something new, something exciting, something I completely forgot to mention last time, but I think is really cool and important about applied ethics. And like I said, applied ethics is about being able to justify our decisions to other regular people. Applied ethics is not trying to convince the ethicists and philosophers. That's taking you into ethical theory. Applied ethics is about convincing normal people about the rightness of your decisions. And so doctors are trying to convince their stakeholders, other doctors, patients, nurses, the government, lawyers, probably lots of lawyers, always lawyers. But they're trying to convince these various groups that they're right. Similarly in business, businesses are having to justify their decisions to all sorts of different stakeholders, their employees, their shareholders, consumers, government again, and lawyers again, of course. But again, the idea is that it boils down to applied ethics to a very simple concept of securing legitimate cooperation. This is, I think, the cornerstone of applied ethics. It's how can I secure the cooperation of others? Life, unless you're that rare hermit, does not happen in isolation, but I need the cooperation of others in order to achieve my personal goals and wishes and desires and aspirations, whatever. I need other people's buy-in. At the very least, I don't want them to try to stop me and get in my way, but oftentimes I actually need their help, whether it's their time, their attention, maybe money, I don't know. It could be lots of things. And if we're talking about government and running of society, of course, we need cooperation from so many different people. And that's what applied ethics is. How can I secure the legitimate cooperation of others? It's a powerful notion, gives me goosebumps. I'm a nerd. I hope you can see the interest of that. Because again, ethical theory is about philosophers trying to settle on the one way of life. Good luck. We don't have time to wait for that. In applied ethics, I need your cooperation, you as a human being, not you as a philosopher. All right, cool. I like that idea. We'll see what we make of it as we go forward. Last time we also talked about descriptive and normative claims. Again, descriptive claims, I'll just make it simpler. You can review the earlier clip to get the formal definitions. But again, descriptive claims are just trying to tell us what is the case about something, whereas normative claims are trying to tell us what should be the case about that something, or they're evaluating something. So again, descriptive, what is the case? What are the facts? What's going on? I'm not going to sing it again. Normative claims, what should be the case? That's prescriptive, or making a recommendation. Normative, also evaluative, making evaluations, good, bad, right, wrong, ugly, beautiful, so on, lots of different things. And so then we can sing the song, sing with me now. Ethics is not psychology, nor is it sociology, not even anthropology. What a wonderful world this would be. I'm sorry, I don't drop the class. Ethics, of course, is not like the things I just sung about, but ethics is a normative area. Ethics is about what ought I do, what ought we do. And recall that what ought I do is the practical question. It is the practical of practical questions, the most practical, however you want to think of it. So again, that's why ethics, what we're studying is that we're studying action. We're studying human action. This makes ethics, again, practical, makes ethics strategic. I love this idea of ethics being strategic. It's like, if you're talking to like an engineer or a business where you use strategy, yes, because that's helping us plan and act accordingly. Ethics is all of that. And last time we discussed some important points about moral reasoning, that the right thing to do is the thing that has the best reasons for doing it. And we talked about that there is a give and take with moral reasoning, with this give and take of reasons. So the idea was, again, there was 2 points to this. One, we are prepared, just for whatever reason, that if we make a claim about what's right or what's wrong, we are often already prepared when asked to provide a justification for that. That's number one. We are prepared to justify our ethical claims. It's very rarely that someone will just shrug their shoulders. Certainly we don't admire that. We think that's silly. If you don't have a reason for what you're doing, that's pretty arbitrary. That's number one. We are prepared to justify our right, or what we think is right or wrong. 2 of moral reasoning is that we are prepared to challenge others for their justifications. If someone tells you this is right, you're prepared. You don't feel weird, I hope, asking why is that? Tell me more. I won't sing that either. So again, moral reasoning. The right thing to do is the thing that has the best reasons behind it for doing it. There's 2 parts of moral reasoning. One, we are prepared to justify our moral claims. And 2, we are very comfortable asking others why, asking them to justify their moral claims. I will justify, and I expect you to do the same. That's moral reasoning, pretty awesome. I also talked a bit about consistency. I was trying to say the idea that there are good and bad reasons in thinking about ethics, and this isn't the only one, but one of the good reasons is consistency. That is, we just recognize that if you act a certain way in one situation, you probably should act the same or similarly in similar situations. So if you apply a rule in one case, you apply it to all cases that are like that. Unless there's always exceptions when we're dealing with reason, unless, of course, there's a good reason to make an exception or a good reason to treat things differently that might look the same. And that was the case with the math of the trolley that we talked about last time. The math is the same, but people seem to think there is a good reason to treat those situations very differently. And consistency is a good reason, but also I mentioned very briefly things like accuracy. The reasons I'm giving, if they evolve anything about facts, they should be true, not lies. And good reasons are also impartial. That is, they're not biased towards one person or another. I hope that makes sense. And then so Rachel's put this all together, as I mentioned last time, in what they called the minimum conception of morality. I'll throw up the picture, but so I won't have to repeat it. You can pause if you really want to refresh. But again, the basic idea here is twofold with this basic conception, is that we shouldn't act arbitrarily without justification. And then we should, second, pay attention to how our actions are affecting other people. So again, the two parts to the minimum conception: one, act according to reason, not arbitrarily. Second aspect is that we should consider the interests of those that are affected by our actions. Or if interests you don't like, we should just pay attention to what's happening, who's affected and how. That probably matters in some way. Lots of debate on how, but at least the minimum conception says we shouldn't. It seems pretty callous to ignore others. And we kind of ended there last time with just the idea that this seems to be the common sense view about morality. At the very least, morality does these things. It's caring about how your actions affect others, and it's not done randomly, but with some kind of justification. All right, and I hope that's not too controversial. I mean, I always like to say early on is like, look, if you think it's okay to torture children for your own pleasure, maybe you should drop the class. I mean, your parents must have messed up somewhere along the way, because I'm not here to tell you that it's... If I have to be the one to teach you that torturing young children for your pleasure is wrong, we as a society are doomed. Okay, I like to end with something dramatic. All right, that is enough. Let's take a quick break. Well, that was a longer session than I thought. Oh well, such is life. But it's good, I think, to review this stuff. Anyhow, let's take a quick break, and once you're back, we can talk about law and ethics. Thank you very much.